And in the next battle, like, just like suck his life,
And we're live. Awesome. Okay, so I'm back again now. We're here with Mr. Chris Gogolen. He is one of the players who actually came together to create the MPC. So this has been your, how many years have you done this?
This is year 12, 13, 12. I think 2007 was the first year, so I played in all of them. And I think it's 12 years now.
So you're one of the few exclusive. He's been here every year. I think it's like, what, 4 people now?
I think we're at 7. I think there's like 7 of us left, but 5 of us live in New Jersey, so it's not really. Yeah, that's the perks of creating the event, right? You get to schedule it at a time and a location that's convenient for you, but.
So, what exactly? So, I remember you actually came up around and said the story behind the MPC was you just followed a lot of like March Madness or something, and you thought that would be a cool idea for.
It was Greg Shaw and Bill Kafer. They were coming back, I think, from Origins or something like that, and had the idea of trying to do a March Madness type event where it was a bracket format, and because at that point in time, match play was really only ever done for. Like top 8s or top 6, top Final 4s, Final Confrontations, and not a lot of people got to play in that format. And it was always something people who never made the cut kind of always wondered, like, well, what does that feel like playing a final match or playing that? So creating this type of format did it. Plus, it also adds that new level of excitement. It sets up the ability to do like a prediction contest with the brackets and creates a whole lot of hype around the event. And when they called me and told me, hey, we're trying to do this thing, I was like, this is a brilliant idea. I absolutely love this. Like, what do you need from me to help get this going? And we found our first location, had our 32-person bracket. I think we only had like 31 people who played that year.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
And got it going. And now here we are 12 years later with still 50-plus people playing. So.
Yeah, and it's been known to be that besides Worlds, yes, we're again Matt Sokol,
2000 World Champion.
The second time he's photobombed.
Last year's team tournament champion, co-champ with me. But yes. We won the team event last year. We got the mugs.
So you win more than just the constellations?
I do. I win team events too, and I've got quite a few of those mugs sitting on my shelf at home as well, next to my Sunday constellation event trophies. And
So how do you prepare for this event? Because as the person who runs it, I know there's a lot of planning, brackets, getting people to register. Besides that, how do you plan? Because I mean, a lot of I was talking to Jerry earlier. There's a lot of looking at the bracket to see who you're playing to figure out what kind of deck you're playing.
It is, and that is certainly a thing because I mean, even though you figure out like, oh, Rob's might be the best deck. If I look at the 4 people in my kind of corner of the bracket and go, none of them really play control style decks. They play more main style decks. So I don't necessarily would think that they would play Robs, so therefore I don't need to worry about it. So even though it may be the best deck that everyone assumes is the best deck, whatever it is, I'm not choosing the light side that has favorable matchups against it because I don't expect people to play it. So that's where a lot of that comes into. You got to do a little bit of your research and your homework. Thankfully, the homepage of the PC site now has all the deck lists from the prior major events, so I can look and say, okay, who's in my corner of the bracket? Well, it's very likely I'll probably play Mr. Steve Harpster, and then eventually move on to possibly playing, Reed Smith, Mike Kessling, Keith Brown. So let's look at what kind of decks those guys have played recently. And you're not just looking necessarily at the deck type, like, oh, they play a lot of Throne Room. It's like, all right, well, no, they play a lot. They played 4 different decks the last couple of events. But is there a style to it? Did he play Throne Room, Hitco, and Tig? Which are like, all right, he's playing mains. That's his style of play, and that I can kind of prepare for and look at it that way. If he's playing, entanglements, hunt down, and CCT, you're like, well, you're kind of all over the place there, and I can't get a read on that. So then I have to just pick something that I feel the most comfortable with for me, and just say, you know, whatever's going to happen happens. I can't prepare for whatever that you might throw, curveball you might throw at me, and so
what decks did you go into? I know that you've already advanced out of the. You had a first round bye,
yes,
and then you actually just played your second round opponent.
I did. His first round opponent was unable to make it, so he automatically advanced. So we went and played round 2. We're not publishing these live yet, right?
This is live.
This is live on yours. You're right. Sorry. So anybody might be watching. I don't want to give out too much advice.
We currently have 2 people watching, so.
As long as one of them isn't Steve Harpster or Reed Smith. And I played. I went with EBO and Map today. Were my 2 back choices. I went with things that were a little more off the wall and unusual for me. If you look at previous events, you know, I played Huntdown, I played TTO most recently, and if you were to flip a coin and say what's Gogolen going to play, it would probably be one of those 2 decks. So with the MPC, you always have to try and mix it up a little bit, keep your opponent from pigeonholing you into something.
So what made you go with those 2 decks?
They did well at Endor for people. So Matt Sokol had a very strong success rate with it. I played a couple games with it, and it felt pretty solid. And then EBO is what Johnny used to win, and Desai had used to win the OCS. Or Gem, one of the 2 of them used it.
I think Gem won the OCS, but we can go back and check.
Yeah, well, I know.
But it was a K-Todd person.
It was a KTOD deck that they used, and one of them, you know, did very well. And it was like a turn 3 beat down on Joel's, and for like.
That was Mike Jeff.
Yeah, Mike overflowed him for like 35 on like turn 2 or something like that with the big huge base battle, and it's like, yeah, this deck has some teeth to it. It doesn't really give up a lot of damage or opportunity on the ground.
No, and it has the ability to. I think it only gives 2 icons to the dark side.
It doesn't give up a lot of icons either.
So, as a dark side player, that puts you in like a lot of a limitation.
Right.
So, especially if you're playing against a deck like Rocks, where you're not generating a lot by yourself, or Hunt Down, where you do have the ability to generate by yourself with just 1 battle group.
Right.
Well, you know, sit down and you run the risk of a loot plus, like, say, a Wedge, Red Leader, or Ice Storm.
Right. Yeah, things like that. You've got hits and hits, canceling drains from the system, and you know, weird little things like that going on. That yeah, you know, its ground package isn't very strong, but then again, it's not really ever going to the ground. It's doing all its damage in space, and it's a lot harder to interact and cause a lot of overflow against light side in space. Dark side doesn't have a lot of options. I mean, they've got, you know, you got to piece multiple things together with, you know, multiple pilots who add destinies and things like that, and then that's what Rebel leadership is for, just to get you out of trouble with that. So.
And again, with Map right now is an extremely solid deck. And it seems like a lot of the top players do play. Like I know Lenny last year won Endor with Map.
Yep.
Lenny, who's a player who not a lot of people expected, but he just came in and was able to take Map to the next step. Then we have players like Sokol or all those other players who have played Map and done well in events, who are top players.
Had a great deal of success with it, and you know, it's a deck that certainly requires a lot of in-game nuances and things like that, with when to deploy and when to move, and you know, what cards to take from your used pile with your battle pulls. Sometimes the little things like that can really be the thing that changes the game. But you know, again, it has certainly has a lot of resilience to it, and it can be hard to interact with. And that's kind of what I went with today. The decks that were going to put my opponent on their heels, trying to figure out how they were going to interact with me.
It seems like a good strategy, especially now that you essentially have a nice little 2.5 hour break to see who your next round opponent is. You have the possibility of, I believe, facing I want to say it's either.
It'll be Harpster or whoever comes out of the bottom corner of that bracket, which was Jan and Sam Tashima. Whoever wins that game will move on to play Harpster, and the winner of that game will play me at about 3 o'clock. Eastern Standard Time for those of you watching around the world.
And then is it today, we get to the top 4, or is it
Yes.
to the top 8?
We get to the top 4. We'll play another round after that. Cut all the way down to the top 4.
So it's not like it's where it's Worlds or any of the other majors where you play 8 rounds. You have the possibility of playing 8 rounds today,
Yes.
but with the buys, you're going to have a little bit more time. So,
Yeah, we'll play a full, like the other games, we play 8 games of Swiss. 8 bracket games will be played today, 4 rounds, and then we'll have just a final 4 left tomorrow. And then the consolation event is also Swiss, so they'll play 6 games Swiss today, and they're still cutting to a top 4.
oh, so it's not like the bracket
Right,
constellation that we
because we had an odd number of people and things, and it was going to be weird with people getting buys again. And we wanted to make sure we could include as many people as possible, so even the people who lose in round 2 might have had a buy in round 1 and not played yet. We'll have an opportunity to jump into the Swiss tournament later today, so that at least they get to play the maximum amount of Star Wars for the weekend and get their money's worth out of it.
So do you have anything else to say to those who decided not to come to the tournament this year?
It's disappointing that you guys couldn't make it. Obviously, this is one of I think it's the funnest event of the year in terms of preparing for it, in terms of the players and all of the hype and the interactions and all the different paths and strategies that could play out. When you get those random upsets, and things like that too, where it's like, oh my God, this bracket is busted, or this guy's on a tear. Just like the NCAA tournament, when a 12 seed starts taking off, and you're like, how is a 12 seed in the Elite 8? Like, where did this come from?
Or like last year, we had
a number 1 seed going out in the first round when Virginia.
I don't think we've ever had a 1 seed lose in the first round at the MPC. I know we've had maybe a 2 seed lose.
We've had, I believe, a 2 seed lose in the first round. We had a 1 seed 1 year, but he just couldn't make it. So his opponent got the bye. It's a withdraw. It's not a win, but yes, 16 to advance.
I know we've had a few upsets. I think the big one I can remember was Matt Sokol as a 3 seed.
He lost in the first round. I know Brian Harold 1 year as a 3 seed. I think lost in the first round. We've had a couple of those. Usually it's your 6-11s, your 5-12s, where you see more of your upsets. Because the further you get apart, obviously, the further just the achievements and the accomplishments of the players get, and it's a lot harder unless the seeding committee screwed up and ranked someone either too low or too high.
We all know that our seeding committee is pretty infallible.
And there's some people we just don't know, and there's always that person who's never played before, and you're like, I know the 1 year we had Dan Kim.
Yes.
I think we ranked Dan as like a 12 or a 13 because no one had ever seen Dan play before, and Dan made it all the way to the Final Four that year, and then the following 6 months later won the Worlds and was the world champion.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, where did this guy come from? He didn't play really any sanctioned events.
Was he from Minnesota?
I'm not sure exactly, but I know he had been playing a lot on a hollow table, which at that point in time not a lot of people were paying attention to, and he was playing a lot of private games that people couldn't spectate. So we didn't really have an idea of Dan's playing ability, and he certainly.
So Jem is a big part now.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that he helped with a lot of seeding and stuff this year.
It did. It certainly did. Being able to look at, not just past live events, world championships, prior MPCs, and things like that. Having the OCS. Did they compete? Did they play? Okay. Well, the OCS was 84 games. If you played all of them last year, if you played all 8 months, or 96 games if you played all 8 months. So, if you went 60 and 36, okay, that's a pretty good win-loss record.
Yeah.
So that gives us an idea, maybe you're a pretty caliber player. If you went 20 and 76 and played all your games, it's like, okay, maybe you need to be a lower seed. Either you're playing goofball decks, or you're not a strong player.
And that's something you also want to take into consideration. You want to see month to month if a player is playing the same or goofball decks just to have some fun. Versus, 1 month they go.
Right, you went 7 months. You go 7, 8 wins 1 month, and if you get 3 wins next month, it's like, all right, well, did you play harder? What's your opponent's win percentage? Because we can look at that too. If your opponent's win percentage is 25 and you lost 9 of your 12 games, okay, well then the people you played also didn't win very many games either. So that gives us. So now we've got more metrics, we've got more tools And I feel like there were far fewer complaints this year about seedings than we had in previous years.
Yes. Yeah, normally, hopefully you get Steve Puck for a 2 seed.
Yes. It was actually, yes, there was some contention where, you know, there were a couple players who were on that bubble for like that last 2 seed, or who was going to be the last 2, who was going to be a 3, and you know, Steve coming off the strong finish, making the finals of the Indoor Grand Prix, we gave him the nod. You know, we've been accused in the past of East Coast bias a little bit too. Sometimes we might have given that nod to a player we're more familiar with, but you know, I played against Steve a number of times, so has Greg and Bill, so we had a pretty good rep on Steve's ability and coming off the finals again. As long as he draws 12 cards with his starting interrupt, Steve should do well.
Well, thank you, Chris. Good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you for doing the interviews all weekend.
Welcome, and we'll have more interviews as we continue. Stay in touch.